When talking about the ACT or SAT and comparing them for your student and deciding which one you should put your resources into and their time into preparing for, it's really generally a student will fall into what we call the judgment call zone, which is that they'll fall into an area where their ACT and SAT are very comparable. This should make sense. Our students are who they are. ACT and SAT have spent decades generally engineering their tests to assess where your student is. In the exceptional times, which is about 40% of the time, a student clearly delineates that one test is better for them than the other. Some factors we want you to think about are, if a student is stronger in math, then the SAT might be a choice based on that, because the SAT weighs their math performance higher towards their composite score. If a student is generally stronger in the verbal skills, you may consider the ACT as the choice. One, because the math section is worth an equal amount to the other sections, which is about 25%. The science reasoning section, which often is thought of as a science section, it is not. It is a logic section based on your ability or your student's ability to simply understand experiments, look at graphs, tables, charts, and extrapolate from there. The other two sections in the ACT are English, which is mainly grammar, and 9th grade grammar at that, and reading, which is simply about comprehending passages that you read quickly and answering a set of questions. So where the SAT differs is simply in that their math sections are split in two. One section doesn't require but allows a calculator, and one section does not allow a calculator at all. Their writing section is very similar to the English section in ACT. It's very grammar heavy. And their reading section is much like the ACT, about comprehension. You may remember the days, if you're anywhere near my age, I like to say, where vocabulary was a huge component of the SAT. That is no longer the case. So us as parents often like to relay our childhood experience with the SAT or ACT, and I will warn you against that. Both tests have changed a lot, not only dramatically, but many times since we've taken the test. So back to the judgment call zone is that often students do score relatively close to one another when we compare their SAT and ACT. And now you fall into the areas of just comfort on test day. Which test did your child emotionally, generally feel more comfortable taking? The SAT gives a little more time. The ACT might feel a little easier in certain areas of content. So once you get past the numbers, we want to talk to your children about what tests just seem to jive a little better. I will tell you this, you do not want to prepare for the two different tests at once. It's much like preparing for a sprint and a marathon at the same time. It does not mix well. Now, once you do prepare for one test, it's very easy to apply those strategies to the next test if you do it sequentially. So another question we get often here is, does my PSAT or PACT give me a very good idea of which test I should take or how well I'm going to do on the subsequent SAT and ACT? You should know those two tests, which are given usually in the fall of junior year, but you can also take sophomore year, are very different tests from the ACT and SAT. Most schools use them as a measuring mark for how kids are doing in school. The PSAT is also utilized for the National Merit Scholarship Program, by which your PSAT score allows you to qualify to apply for a National Merit Scholarship, of which their pool is $180 million. I will tell you this, you need to be close to the top 1% of students on the PSAT score to reach that mark. So for the rest of us human beings, the reality is those scores are a good measuring stick for where your student is at that time generally, but not necessarily a great measure of how they're going to do on the subsequent test from that company. PSAT does not tell you directly how your student's going to do on an SAT. There are so many available copies of SATs that you can take, whether you take a free proctored exam at the house where we generate our detailed report and walk you through the results, or you simply take a test that's available in a book or on the internet and score it yourself. You should realize that that will give you much more accurate information than relying on the PSAT or PACT. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact us at the house. Thank you.